Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, we are an intergenerational network of Black women and girls in the state of Mississippi that's working really to advance women's economic security.
Dirty Napkins is kicking off a new series celebrating women in our communities, making great strides in creating real change. Kicking off our series is none other than Cassandra Welchlin. She's an advocate, a change maker, looking to reform policy and put power in the right person's hands. The table is set. Now let's get some napkins dirty.
Hi there, I'm Galinda Bonner. I'm a native Jacksonian, born and raised. 2007, my son was done working with On the Border because they closed, and I was home retired from AT&T. So we decided to open Sugar's Place in May of 2008, and we did. It is now 2022, and we are still here at Sugar's Place. Sugar's is named after my mom, who was Velma Cage. She got the nickname Sugar because my dad said she was so sweet. I started cooking about the age of 5. My dad would put me on a little red stool and I learned how to cook grits and oatmeal for my 6 siblings because mama was gone to work. Brief rundown of our menu is we have breakfast, which is our chicken and waffle any time of the day, biscuits, toast, grits, cheese grits and regular. We also have for lunch our fried catfish. We have special days where we do chicken tetrazzini, red beans and rice. We do baked chicken. We have wings, tenders, and shrimp. Come see us 7 to 2 Monday through Friday, and we are available for catering at 601-750-6562 at any time. Thank you for joining us here today on Dirty Napkins.
Cassandra, thank you for joining us here at Dirty Napkin.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here again.
Yes. Well, tell us more about the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable.
So the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, we are an intergenerational network of Black women and girls in the state of Mississippi that's working really to advance women's economic security and to increase the voter participation through civic engagement for Black women and girls. We know Black women, vote. And so we're working to increase that and really create this culture around voting even more. And also to develop a leadership pipeline for Black women and girls so that we can impact public policy. We like to say that we shift power at the voting booth and at the policy table.
Wow. So tell us more about the Economic Security Initiative.
So the Mississippi Women's Economic Security Initiative was founded in 2015, actually in another organization, the Low Income Child Care Initiative. And it was founded and created by women in the state of Mississippi all over the state. And basically, it's focused on advancing a policy agenda that speaks to what women need to be economically secure. And so this legislative session, we have put this legislative agenda before the lawmakers. We understand that that women are not, that we have to bring our own agenda to the policy table because lawmakers aren't prioritizing women. And so for us, it was very important that we bring that policy agenda to them to say women matter in the state of Mississippi. And so this legislative session has, like the ones in the past, we have put forward this agenda. And that basically says that, women matter around our economic security, particularly around access to health care, wages, paid leave, sick leave, everything women need in order to work, have a good, healthy family, and also to play, as well. And so we have put that agenda forward and are pushing the legislators to pay attention to what women need, because women make up half the workforce in the state of Mississippi, but yet we're 2/3 of the minimum wage earners. And we are the essential workers, to the state economy, but also to our households.
Now, this isn't your first legislative push. You guys were also pushing for equal pay. Tell us a little bit about that and how that went.
Yeah, so last legislative session, along with our coalition partners, and I'll say the Mississippi Women's Economic Security Initiative is made up of many organizations and individuals, and most of them are women in the state. And so we have women, again, all over the state that have committed themselves to advancing women's economic security. So these are women who are organizers, activists, lead organizations, philanthropic organizations. We've had lawmakers who've been a part of this as well. We've had some institutions that have been a part of the initiative. And so last legislative session, we had been working to push a good equal pay law in the state of Mississippi. And what a good equal pay law is one that would really work to close the wage gap and remove the discriminatory practices that so many women have or experience in the state of Mississippi. And so particularly that a good equal pay law for us looked like making sure there was transparency, banning salary history. Salary history is one of those things that follow women from one job to the next job. And so we wanted the state legislature to, pass a law that would remove an employer relying on, a woman's previous salary. Wow. The other thing was to stop retaliation. If a woman brought an issue before her employer, that she would not be retaliated against. Another thing that we wanted in a good equal pay law was not have a law that's based on gender, but also race. We know that Black women and brown women experience some of the highest, wage gaps. For Black women in Mississippi particularly, we make 56 cents on the dollar. White women make 75 cents on the dollar. Wow. That's a huge gap. And so we want the rest of our money, right? And so, and what that means too is that we're losing, Mississippi women, particularly Black women, are losing over $21,000 a year. Can you imagine what we can do with $21,000 a year, right? I mean, we're talking about, savings and money going towards childcare and money going toward rent and utilities, right? And we know that the pandemic exacerbated those issues. Right. So those are some things we wanted in a good equal pay law. However, the state of Mississippi passed anything but an equal pay law. We call it the unequal pay law of Mississippi.
So what was passed?
So what was passed in the state legislature was a law that gave an employer the right to discriminate based on a woman's, based on how long she had gaps in employment. So for instance, if you and I had a baby, or if we went on leave to take care of a loved one, and we know that women are caregivers of our families, right? So if she had employment gaps, then an employer would discriminate against her pay or would not give her what she should be given because she took off time from work. Wow. A woman is always going to take off time from work because we are caregivers. And again, when you think about the pandemic, we had to take care of our children, and childcare was a real issue. The other thing that the bill did was discriminate against her based on her wage negotiation skills. Well, we know that a woman doesn't negotiate.
A woman is less likely to negotiate.
Absolutely, right? And so, and we know the stereotypes that exist there, not that we can't, but there are stereotypes that exist if we do. And so that bill does that. The other thing that the bill says that you have to waive your federal rights if you file a state claim. So if you file under the state law, it says that you will have to waive your federal rights. Well, we know that that's unconstitutional. And so these are some of the things that this bill, did. And it's, and what we believe has happened is that this bill has created one of the worst wage gaps in the country. We have the worst, equal pay bill in the country. So now we have begun to just do education in community to let community know you still have federal rights. The state law does not trump the federal law. You still can file, and you can file under both, but you still have federal rights. And so it is our hope that employers will not use the Mississippi law to further the discrimination that women employees are experiencing. And so we're going to be doing our education with employers to let them know you can do better than the state law. You can raise the bar even higher. So we hope in the near future that we'll be able to go back to the negotiation table and make that bill stronger so that we can really close that equal pay gap in the state.
And we were speaking earlier, and we were talking a bit about childcare.
Yeah.
And is the childcare a part of the economic security initiative that you guys are fighting for right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. The state of Mississippi has a childcare subsidy program. Every state does, and the federal government gives money to the state so that working moms, working parents who make a certain amount of money can get access to those federal dollars so they can send their kid to their child to child care. And currently right now, we know that there's talks about possibly cutting 12,000 children from that child care certificate program. Now, the money that's in the state pot is not enough money to cover all the children that we know qualify for this program. And we know there are barriers that exist for these moms who need this needed child care assistance. There has been research done that says that if a mom has access to this child care subsidy program, she will still likely be employed a year, 2 years, 3 years later, because it really does help stabilize it. And so some of the barriers that the state of Mississippi has implemented or carry out is moms who apply for the child care program, they have to put the non-custodial parent on child support. Well, what we've seen is that data shows is that deters a lot of women from applying for that, because there are agreements that happen between that mom and that dad. And so some of the things that we're advocating for is just to eliminate that. Head Start does not have that kind of policy. So why does child care have to have it? So that's one thing. And so we're advocating that be removed. The other thing is making sure that enough resources go into the child care subsidy program so those 12,000 children won't be cut. That would be problematic already in a place where we know poverty exists in high numbers in the state of Mississippi, and we know that 8 out of 10 moms are breadwinners, particularly Black women are breadwinners of their families. Well, those are households led by single moms. And so those are little children in those households. So this is not just a woman issue, but a family issue and an economic issue. So we want to make sure that the state of Mississippi put the funds where they need to be and recoup the TANF funds that were stolen from these parents who so need these resources just to make ends meet.
And for those who don't know what those funds are, can you explain?
Yeah, so temporary assistance for needy families. And so these are families who really are at the lowest poverty level, in the state of Mississippi, who just need those additional funds just to make ends meet. And so, and of course, everyone has seen the news around the welfare scandal that happened with the Department of Human Services. Millions and millions and millions of dollars were stolen that was supposed to go to these families so that they can make ends meet. It's not a lot of money, but still, We know families that, really work to stretch that penny, and stretch that dollar. And so we need the state to hold those entities accountable for stealing that money and putting those resources back into the hands of families who really need those. And then just remove those barriers that exist so that families can have the access to transition from welfare to work, which, that's what families do. I mean, they work. And but oftentimes we live in a system that continues to perpetuate, the barriers that keep families in those systems where they can't move from welfare to work.
Cassandra, I think it's important to really paint the picture. If these kids are dropped from this child care program, really paint the picture for us and tell us what really happens in these homes and in our communities.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And this is just a scenario of what we know happens. So if a mom, let's say she loses her child care certificate, and we've heard the stories over and over again. She loses her child care certificate and she depends on that so that she can send her child to school so that she can work. If she loses that child care certificate, she will not be able to go to work. And she, again, is the only breadwinner in that family. And so she loses her job. And if she loses her job, then what happens is that the impact of that is that she doesn't have the money to pay for the utilities. And so her utilities will get cut off. And then she won't have the copay or the money to pay for her mortgage. And what happens is that we often get calls, and some of our partners get calls, from these moms saying, we don't have any lights and we don't have any water. Do you have any assistance to help us get the water turned back on? Or we're about to get kicked out of our home. Do you have any resources to help us? We have been blessed to be able to have rapid response money to provide some of those resources to those homes, but it's a very limited amount. But we saw that a lot, particularly during the pandemic, particularly during the Jackson water crises, where families just did not have it. And so families were getting being pressured by their landlords to move out of their home. And then when the moratorium lifted, families were actually put out of their homes. So that impact is real, and it causes this instability to occur. And so now families will have to go surfing, couch surfing, from one place to the next. And that's a form of homelessness or unhoused. Families are being unhoused. So it's a real issue. So that child care certificate is so key and so important. And again, when you talk about a lot of these jobs don't have the paid leave, the sick leave, and then they don't have the flex time, as well. And so a mom hasn't been able to stay on the job long enough to build up, particularly if she's blessed enough to have a job where she can earn, some sick leave or some paid leave. But if she doesn't, then she just loses her job, and the employer oftentimes aren't as kind, to her. And so she's lost her job and is at home with that child. And we know the domino effect that.
It just seems like it's just one thing after the other, just almost going against a mother, especially in a single home that's just trying to survive with her children.
Absolutely.
How do you keep the community from feeling hopeless and the next generation feeling like they have to, continue down this cycle?
Yeah.
With no real help from
from our institutions. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important that, organizations like ours, we do have, those temporary resources to help fill in the gaps. And when we don't have it, we'll, work with another entity to help. But that is just one, of many, many, many families, right? And so it definitely can be and has been a desperate situation, for so many families. But we're doing our part in helping to fill that gap and to again work to change some of the policies. We had organizations and partners that was working to try not to get the governor to send those ramp funds, back. Those funds that was supposed to go to help families pay for their mortgage and pay for their rent particularly. And so it can be a very desperate situation. And so that's why we have to be as creative as we can to work to get, funds and to advocate that policies are working in the favor, of these families.
Wow. Well, you're definitely painting a picture for us here. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll learn more about how we all can step in and help fill in that gap. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Dirty Napkins, where we're here with Cassandra Welchlin, who is talking to us a lot about the Economic Security Initiative. And we've been talking a lot off camera about this too. And talk to me a little bit more about the postpartum extension that you guys are working on.
So we know in the state, Mississippi has the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. And particularly that's high among Black women. Many women have complications 60 days, 6 weeks after having a baby. And when we talk about whether you have insurance or you don't have insurance, it doesn't matter. I mean, Black women, we have, some of the highest medical crises that occur in this country. And so one of the things that we, along with our other partners like, Six Dimensions, have been advocating for is that we've got to be able to lower that maternal mortality rate. And how we do that as a solution is to extend Medicaid from 6 weeks or 60 days to 12 months. Right now in the state of Mississippi, women who are on Medicaid have to, you only have it for for those 6 weeks, and then you end. But what we know, the research shows, or that it ends, but the research shows that women have a lot of crises after then. And so we, on this past week, we launched a campaign called Strong Babies and Healthy Moms, Back to the Bond. And basically what we're saying is the state of Mississippi, you care so much about the life of this baby. And we know this is really important in the midst of Roe being overturned. Right. And the state of Mississippi wants the life of a baby. But we're saying back to the bond, a strong baby does not exist without a healthy mom. And so those things go together. We can't be hypocritical on one end of this, right? And just saying, oh, it's all about that baby. No, it's about that mom. That baby comes from that mom. And so we are advocating that the state of Mississippi, the legislature, and particularly the House of Representatives, and Speaker Gunn, that he pass the bill that would give women this life-saving insurance. They already have it. Actually, they were given it during the pandemic by the federal government. It's just an extension of what they already have. So just extend it. Mississippi is one of 2 states that just have not extended or has not extended Medicaid. And so this isn't an expansion. We're talking about extending Medicaid to these moms so they can have it. And we know, I mean, I'm a mom, you're a mom, and I can tell you the experiences that I had, as a mom. I had baby blues really bad. probably 3 days after getting out of the hospital, no, a week after getting out of the hospital, I had a horrible UTI. I was shaking really bad, developed a fever. I was in the shower. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm in that shower and I'm under scorching hot water just to get warm. And I was shaking, and my husband had to get me out of the bed, out of the tub, dry me off, and I was shaking. We had to be rushed to the hospital. And this is a week after having the baby. So I've delivered the baby, and now I am having some issues. We get to the doctor at the hospital, and they was like, you have a really bad urinary tract infection. And so they had to give me medicine just to, take care of that. And here I am nursing, but I couldn't even nurse the baby because now I'm on antibiotics, right? And so I had to pump. So it was a lot that was going on. And that's just one issue I had. I had depression really bad during, every child, every birth, after giving birth, I had postpartum depression really, really bad. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse.
And this extension would cover?
It would cover it. It would cover that mom up to a year after having the baby. My postpartum lasted a year, right? And so thank God I had, insurance to help that. But you think about when a mom gets cut off at 6 weeks, right? What happens? And so we are advocating that the state of Mississippi will pass the bill, just pass the bill so that these babies can have their moms and their moms can have their babies. So that's the work that we, along with many other coalition members, are advocating for. And there's only one person that's holding up this legislation, and that has been Philip Gunn. And Philip Gunn, comes from a woman, and he's in a house, with women, with his daughters, right? And so the politics must go away, and we need to really focus on the human being and really center the person, and that person is that woman.
Do we have a clear understanding on what his pushback on this bill is?
It's around the money, and we can't afford it. But we know the state economist has said, oh, Mississippi can't afford it. And it will add 12,000 jobs to the state economy. And so the data is clear. The data is there. And so we know that what he's saying has been debunked. And if the state economist is saying, no, Mississippi can't extend this and we can pay for it, the federal government has given resources to also help pay for it, and you're going to create 12,000 more jobs. Mississippi, we need that, right? And so there's no real reason to not do this. It's life-saving, and the resources will go back into the economy.
Now, this is an election year, so this is very key. Are you hopeful that you could see some things pass because of this?
I am hopeful that community is paying attention. A lot of organizations, a lot of people have experienced the hardships of what's been going on in the economy because of COVID, right, and the economic downturns that has occurred. But then also all of the rhetoric that we know is going on with, one, you're talking about the Takeover Jackson, the bills that are coming out where we're trying to take over the police department, take over the judicial branch in Hinds County. We're also talking about what's happening in the criminal justice system, where families are they're trying to propose higher fees and fines for people who are coming out of prison. So I'm hoping that people are paying attention, and that will drive them to the polls come November. That is what we are hoping for, and not just hoping for. We know people are asking questions, and so we believe that these issues are very much connected to people's kitchen tables, to people's households, and as a result, people will go to the polls and vote for elected officials that will vote their values. Particularly, we focus on Black women. Black women have always voted in this country. We have always voted. And it will be no different this legislative session. And we know that Black women vote at higher rates during the presidential elections, but we want them to vote in every election. So we've been focusing on infrequent Black women voters. We have a campaign called The Power of the Sister Vote, right? It's so amazing. It's so amazing.
Well, tell us more about it.
Yeah, so The Power of the Sister Vote is our campaign looks like me and you. Mm-hmm. And it talks about the power that women have when it comes to our communities and what that looks like when we go out to the polls. And so we have been organizing forums across the state to turn out Black women, to educate Black women, because we know when we get that information in the hands of Black women, they get it out to their communities. And so we will be doing forums this election cycle. We will be doing education. We will be doing canvassing. So we canvass on the grounds with communities all across the state. And we've been focusing on communities where there are high and frequent Black women voters. So we'll be coming to communities all across the state, targeting that Black women vote and encouraging them to vote and doing Know Your Rights. And so we'll be coming to community and we're saying, Black women, you've always voted. Let's get out and turn up the vote. And we also have a Black Youth Vote program too. And these Black Youth Vote, they're just so incredible. I love these young people. And basically what that is, these young people, we're building a new generation of voters, right? And we're really excited about that because we understand the history in this country when it comes to voting. It was young people, right, that really helped partner along with older folks to really turn out the vote, to really excite, the electorate. And so we got young people that know the issues, can talk about the issues, and they will be engaged in these forums. They will be helping to host the forums in their communities, registering people to vote, and then turning them out. This past this past election cycle, we did a get out the vote with our young people by having a costume bash. Oh, and the commitment was many of them weren't of voting age, but they know the issues and they know it's important to vote. And so the call of action was, you can't vote, but you can take your household to the polls. And so they did. They took their households to the polls. So the Power of the Sister Vote and our Black Youth Vote, we will be activating all across the state. And so I want folks to be looking for us. They can go to our website to find out where we will be. We'd love to come and help, organize some of these things. We never do this by ourselves. We always partner together with community. It takes a community. Absolutely. But Black women, we vote. And so we're going to be looking forward to increasing that infrequent Black women voter at the polls.
You touched on this a bit with the kids getting involved and things like that. And I love the fact that they know the issues. How are you keeping them encouraged and continuing to get out there and push other people to vote and to eventually vote themselves when they keep seeing legislators vote bills against them?
It's interesting. Not just the legislators, but also when we think about what happened, to the young man in Memphis too, right? There's a lot that's in their face, but we give them space. One of the things that we like to say at the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, we create spaces of activism, spaces of healing, and spaces of joy. So we create spaces for these young people to just have a conversation, and we let them talk about what's going on in their world, in their mind. And then we say, what is it that you want to do about it? We actually, they lead their own things. We just provide, some structure, but we let them lead it. And so they actually motivate one another. It's very interesting because where some may be, feeling like, man, is this ever going to get better? You always have an optimistic young person that's there to say, yes, things are going to get better. We are doing, we can't not let this stop. And then you have another person that got the ideas that's going, well, this is what we can do. So they are actually motivating themselves. And what we do is just give them the structure, help raise the money so that they can, do what they want to do. They are full of ideas. Let me just tell you, they are not short of ideas. And then we expose them to other Black Youth Vote initiatives. So we are one of 12 affiliates, the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. We actually have a national organization, a National Black Women's Roundtable. And so in Georgia, in Florida, Louisiana, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And so we all are talking together, and our Black youth are talking together, and they are learning from each other. And so it's been really great to have that encouragement and for them to know you can keep moving on, and they're getting ideas where we feel stuck, where they may feel stuck, they can talk to another chapter, right? And they was like, well, this is what we're doing, over here, and they're learning together. So proud of them. They were able to go to Washington, D.C. to be a part of advocating for Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation. Wow. They went to the Supreme Court. History. Yeah, it was really incredible and amazing. And they went to the Supreme Court to say, women's rights is really connected to, human rights. And so they advocated that Roe would not be overturned. And so we did a lot of education with them. So we are just really excited about the work that they're doing. But the work can't be done in isolation. Intergenerational organizing is so important. That's how I grew up. My mentors were Hollis Watkins, right? And Hollis Watkins taught me and groomed me and mentored me, because he understood that organizing was really key. But you can't just be an organizer by yourself. Young people and old people must come together to learn from each other and share ideas and work together. So it's been really, really good and incredible.
Well, we talked a little bit about this earlier too, about our lawmakers. You said that they are mainly made up of our white male counterparts, and what can we do to get more involved? I think the correlation here too with Black women really turning out at the polls and voting. What can we do to help see change in there?
So our organization, along with One Voice of Mississippi and the Women's Foundation of Mississippi, we actually launched a program to actually get more women interested in running for office. And the name of that program is Mississippi Women in the Lead. And so for the last, I believe, 8 months, we've been working and giving training to women all across the state who are interested, may not quite be, there yet to want to run for office, but they're interested in running for office or supporting women who want to run. They want to be a part of their campaigns. And so we have taken them through, a 8-month program to get them ready to run for office or to support. We gave them information on what the process looked like, what kind of infrastructure you need to really run a successful campaign. Who do you need to have on your team? What does communication look like? What's the money? What are the finance rules around running a campaign? How do you build a message, right? What is your messaging? How do you get the data to show if you, where you are on, being successful in running for this campaign? So we have done that, and we will continue to do that. And from that, we have several women. February 1 is the deadline for running, qualifying to run for office. And we have several women that are going to be running for office. So having more of those kinds of institutes are just really key. Women have to be asked 3 times or more to run because it is an economic hardship, and men are more likely to give to men than to a woman to run for office. And so, and I've run for office twice now, and I understand, it is it's a barrier, an economic barrier to run, for office. But it is so rewarding and so necessary. And so the more we get women in those seats, the more we will have women who will legislate according to our households. Because when women, the data shows that when women are lawmakers, we are lawmakers not just for our families, but for our communities. But that's just how women roll,
Yes,
We think about the whole. And it doesn't really matter, really, even if you're a Republican or a Democrat, we come in and we think about the whole. So the more we have women in office that have our values and that think like us, right? Also, that look like us. I think that's really key and important. And so the more we can get women in those seats, then the better our state, I believe, would be.
And what are other ways that folks out there can get involved?
Well, they can definitely go to our website, the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable's website. There's ways to volunteer, msbwr.org. Follow us on social media. We'll be more than happy to do community workshops, with folks as well. That's one way to get involved. But I'll say the other, way to get involved, and again, we're in an election cycle. The households need to make sure they've checked their voting status. That is so key and important. If you haven't voted in a really long time, please go down to the courthouse and check your voter registration and just see where you are. You may need to register again. You may need to change your address. So that's one way, to get involved. Have community conversations in your living room, right? That's really key, and important. And get your young people involved. Talk to them about the issues. And so, but this is a critical year, and we need every woman, every man to make sure that they are registered to vote and that they show up to the polls and vote. That's going to be really key.
Awesome. I want to shift gears just a little bit here because we have you here because we are celebrating and honoring women like you who are huge advocates and in our communities and making change. And so we want to know what woman, whether alive or not, motivates you and has inspired you.
I have to talk about my mama. I just have to talk about my mama. Miss O. People call her Miss O, Miss Overton. She is just incredible. I think about her so often. One of the things that I say that if I could give the best award, if I could win the lottery, I would just give it to her because she has motivated me to be everything of who I am. I am her story. She is my story. My mom means everything to me. I've talked about this story so often. I learned what justice was from her. And I also learned what service was from my granny, Eva Thompson. My mom was a hard worker. She still is a hard worker. She's even retired and she's still working really hard, but her values around faith, around community, she loves children, and she just does the right thing. And so my mom motivates me. She instills so much in me. And so I really move because I just feel like I'm still accountable to her. And I want to make her proud and make her legacy live on, not just in me, but also in my children too. She's just a phenomenal woman, and I just love Miss O. Love her.
Absolutely is. I happen to know Miss O. And she is a fabulous woman and someone we all can look up to. She's such a beautiful example, and just gives a helping hand wherever she can. And you're right, she loves all the babies.
All the babies. She loves them. She loves them.
All the babies. And tell me, if you could look back and talk to yourself before you started doing all of this community work, and I know you started young because you grew up a part of this, but when you first stepped out there on your own, what would you tell yourself?
I would actually tell my younger self, don't be intimidated. You have everything it takes to do what you've been called to do. Don't be intimidated. Don't listen to what other people are saying about you. Just live. Just don't give your energy away to those that don't matter. Just live and know that God has you. He's got you. And just keep on doing, and that which you don't understand, He will perfect. So I would tell my younger self that, and I still tell myself that now, but don't worry about what others are saying. Don't be intimidated by where you came from. Don't listen to the voice that says that you can't do this because you came from this neighborhood, or you're not as smart as that person. Don't listen to that, because God made you. He got a plan for you, and He will perfect that which you don't understand.
Absolutely. I love that. And finally, you're married as well with 3 little babies as well. Well, your baby's not so little anymore.
Yeah,
they're also, I know. You have 2 girls and a boy.
Yes.
What type of legacy are you hoping to leave behind for them?
Yeah. I hope one that my mom is leaving for us, for me and my sisters too. And that is one of faith, that you really can't do anything without, the love of the Lord and without following Him. So really leaving a spiritual legacy there for them. I think the other one is really around, service. Service is at my heart. Service is at my mama's heart. Service is at my husband's heart. So really leaving a legacy of service, that this life really isn't just about you, it's about others. So give your life away. And I think the other one, of course, is around justice. Leaving a legacy of justice. The Bible talks so much about justice. There's a lot of scripture in the Bible about justice. And so He calls us to do justice. And so I want my children to do justice, and to love people. The former mayor, Chokwe Lumumba, says, and it's my favorite quote, if you don't love the people, sooner or later you will betray the people.
Wow.
And so I want my children to live that out, and to live it out in faith.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's all for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Cassandra Welchlin of Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. Join us again next week. We're going to be highlighting another amazing woman from our community. We do want to give a special thank you to Oxfam for sponsoring this special series that's highlighting women from our community. We do also want to keep in contact with you, so follow us on all social media. That's at Dirty Napkins. It's down there, at Dirty Napkins. That's my time, guys. It's your host, Lauren Nicole.